The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Training Camp Confidential, training camp with the Washington Commanders. The final day of training camp was today. All right, camp is officially over. Preseason game number 3 will take place on Sunday night. The Commanders game against the Patriots actually puts the bow on the preseason. It is the final preseason game for the 2024 NFL preseason. And then we get to a week of practice before the games kick off and count for real. So we've made it to the finish line. Cuts are Tuesday by 4 o'clock. Teams have to make their decision. And I'll assume that on Monday after the game, we will start to see cuts trickling in. You've got to get down from 90 all the way to 53. So the guys that they don't want at all will be cut Monday. And then the guys that they want back onto the practice squad will be cut on Tuesday. Generally, that is how it goes. You give the guys who you don't want back in any capacity an opportunity to find work elsewhere by cutting them loose sooner, right? Meanwhile, the guys that are tough decisions and you're kind of mulling over, you keep those guys around until the final day because you ultimately want to sit down, have a conversation with them and let them know that, hey, we are going to, release you, but we would love to have you back on the practice squad, right? And as you hear DQ talk, and he said this multiple times over the last couple pressers, it's not a 53-man roster in their mind's eye. It's 70 guys, right? With the new rules that have been implemented roughly for now the last 3 years since COVID hit, when they expanded the practice squad and now allow veterans to be on the practice squad. It has changed the way that they've viewed the practice squad and how they view roster construction. And he actually talked about it in this press conference. So we'll talk about that as well, as really there's no practice to report on. As I told you yesterday was the last padded practice of camp. It was really the last real practice of camp. Today was a glorified walkthrough. They're preparing for the Patriots, right? No one's going to play. We'll talk about that in a little bit here as Dan Quinn addressed that in his press conference as well. Before we get to any of that, though, we did have some transactions today, or one in particular, after the busy day out in Ashburn yesterday. I didn't know if we could take any more transactions. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have been following, the news cycles very closely, because yesterday there was just so much heat surrounding the organization. And there was a lot of rumors floating out from various sources saying, hey, don't be surprised if the Commanders make another move in conjunction with trading away Jahan Dotson. I told you guys I didn't think you'd see anything else transpire. Not that something else can't happen between now and, say the middle of next week, but the likelihood is nothing else is going to transpire. Now, Dan Quinn did talk about, this conversation of handling your roster internally versus maybe looking for some outside help. So we'll talk about what he had to say in regards to that a little bit later on. But we did have one transaction take place today. The Commanders signed center Cameron Tom and released center JC Hasenauer. So essentially, that's one of those cosmetic moves that you make to be able to play this third preseason game. All the moves that they've made, for the most part, outside of the big trades that we talked about, the Cade York trade yesterday, and obviously the Jahan Dotson trade, outside of that, all of the moves that they've made, signing Sheldrick Redwine and signing the safety and the linebacker that they signed earlier in the week, signing Cameron Tom here. All they're doing is getting guys that will allow them to play this third preseason game, because they're not going to play any of the guys that they deem to be important players, whether they're starters or some of the guys that are first off the bench in relief. They're not going to put any of those guys at risk in this game. So generally speaking, it's the young guys that are fighting for roster spots. It's some of the guys that are going to be on this team, but they still want to see them in, a defensive capacity or an offensive capacity or a special teams capacity. But a lot of the guys that are playing in this game aren't going to be on the roster, point blank. So that's a lot of the cosmetic moves we've seen here over the last probably 4 days or so. I've been talking about it. Like, a number of you, and if I'm wrong, I'll tell you I'm wrong, but a number of you felt like, and I said this, I think it was Monday or Tuesday. I said it was Tuesday because I got back Monday. I said this on Tuesday. Derek Forrest isn't playing in this game, right? Some of y'all, Derek Forrest is not only playing in this game, he's playing for a roster spot. What are you talking about? Derek Forrest is on this roster. What do you mean he's playing for a roster spot? Derek Forrest is on this team, right? Now, if he gets cut, if he's playing in this preseason game and ultimately gets cut, I will offer up a double O. I owe you that because I was very dismissive of some of you who think he's going to play. The movements that they've had this week with the safeties, how many safeties they've signed onto the roster tells me that they're not playing any of the top 4 safeties. I think Jeremy Reeves could play in this game because they might want to take a look at him some more defensively, not on special teams necessarily, but defensively. But even Reeves might not play in this game. I mean, I really don't think you're going to see a lot of guys that are familiar faces playing in this game, right? Anyway, I digress. Let's get to DQ's presser and what he had to say today. Obviously, he started off the press conference having to talk about all of the activity from yesterday. He did not have a press conference yesterday. We heard from the coordinators yesterday. So I thought that was very strategically done, right? From a strategy standpoint, don't put your head coach out there. He doesn't have to answer all the questions. You put the coordinators out there. They're not going to ask, Joe Witt Jr. about Jahan Dotson. And then they tried to ask Cliff, and he just deferred to the head coach and the general manager. So beautiful strategy. I'm pretty sure that's not why they did that, right? But I'm just saying it just worked out perfectly. So the first question, obviously, after DQ had his opening statement, which he thanked Jahan and Riley Patterson for their service here, was why trade Jahan? And he said, anytime they see an opportunity to help the team, they're going to take it. Translation. First of all, let's dig into that statement itself. Anytime we see an opportunity to help the team, we're going to take it. That is such a slap in the face statement. Not to us as fans, not just in general, right? Because if Jahan Dotson could help this team, are you going to trade him? You could help the team significantly by trading Terry McLaurin. You could get a hell of a lot more for trading Terry than you can Jahan. Are you going to do it? No, because you value Terry here and he can help us a lot more than trading him for a first-round pick, right? So, again, to say that you see an opportunity to help the team, you're going to take it. You didn't value Jahan Dotson. He's not going to say that. He can't say that. I mean, he could, but what good does that do? They didn't value Jahan Dotson. He didn't fit what they deemed to be a commander, right? That's the bottom line. And so they saw an opportunity. He's not lying. He's not wrong. They saw an opportunity because if you're willing to trade a guy, and I don't think this was going to happen, but you have to entertain this thought. If you're willing to trade a player, it means you're willing to cut that same player. Now, I don't think they were going to cut Jahan, right? He's of more value to them on the roster than to just cut him. It's not like he's a malcontent and he was causing problems within the locker room. You don't cut a guy like Jahan if there's value, even if it's just a 5th-round pick. He's still value, right? So you don't cut him. But the fact that they were willing to trade him means that they would have been willing to cut him. It's the same conversation I have with you when I say, if you're going to go to a guy, if you're willing to go to a player and say, hey, we need you to take a pay cut or we need you to restructure your contract. If they say no, you've got to be prepared to cut them, right? That's the point of going to them and asking for a restructure or for them to take a pay cut. Normally, it's in pay cuts where you're saying, hey, either you take this pay cut or we're going to have to cut you, right? How bad do you want to stay here? And it's crazy because that was the what was the safety we got from the Giants? His name. Shucks. Damn, why can't I think of his name? Was his name Collins? I think his name was Collins. I think he went back to the Giants for like maybe 4 or 5 games, but he really never played in the league again after we cut him, right? And he didn't take the pay cut. He thought he could get more money out on Landon Collins. Thank you. I thought it was Collins. I wasn't sure. He thought he could get more money out on the free agent market, and nobody signed him. He was out of football for a full year before the Giants gave him an opportunity, and he only played for a few games in New York, and then that was it, right? Like, you got to be conscientious of that kind of stuff. Anyway, I digress. I really didn't remember his name. I seriously didn't remember Landon Collins' name. I didn't. He was such a non-factor here. I was so excited when we signed him to that big deal, and then he wasn't a big deal, right? So anyway, I forgot his name. Shoot me. So that's all he really gave us on Jahan. Like, we had an opportunity to help our football team, help our organization, and we took it. He's not lying, but it's a slap in the face because you could trade a lot of players and help the organization, but you're not going to do it because you think they can help you here. You value them on the roster here. You did not value Jahan Dotson on this roster because he didn't bring the qualities and the attributes that you were looking for. So DQ talked about decisions to trim the roster and, you know, what happens if there's a stalemate between he and Adam Peters. And he's like, there is no stalemate. He said DQ or Adam Peters is literally the end all be all. Like, if we can't come to a decision on a player, Adam Peters is going to handle it, right? That's his job. He said, so there's no stalemate. You know, we work in unison to try to help get to a place where we can come to, you know, some sort of team decision, but ultimately it's Adam Peters' show, which is so refreshing to hear, right? For so long, there was no real, you know, there was no real food chain. There was no real coordination. There was no teamwork. They would tell us that there was a Redskins decision that was made, but it was Bruce Allen. He was making all the decisions, right? It was Ronald Rivera. They were making all the decisions, right? When it came to cutting guys and drafting guys and signing free agents and not signing guys, that was all them. It's great to hear, though. No, the GM's in control. The feeling of normalcy. Like, this isn't even anything extravagant. It's just normal. And sometimes it just feels good to be normal. I just want to fit in right now. Eventually, I want to be better than all the rest of the organizations in the NFL. But right now, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like everybody else. And now we are. Doesn't that feel nice, guys? Is there a QB competition after one? So we've already decided QB1. That's Jayden Daniels. They made that announcement on Monday this week. And so Ben Standing asked a great question. We've talked about this. I like Jeff Driscoll over Marcus Mariota, but I've also told you that's not happening. But Ben Standing still asked the question, and I love it. He said, is there a competition? And this is what he was hinting at, but he didn't want to directly ask the question because you don't want to piss the head coach off, and he's not going to give you the answer to that question. So you ask a vague question, which is there any other competitions at the quarterback position? You know, QB2 or, keeping 2 versus 3, which is the perfect way to phrase that. And DQ said, yeah, there's some conversations that we're having internally. We're not going to tell you how many quarterbacks we're keeping, but, there's some things that we're mulling over, internally. They're not going to keep 3 quarterbacks, and Jeff Driscoll isn't making this roster over Marcus Mariota. Okay? Understand that there was a whole conversation where DQ literally serenaded Marcus Mariota with praise and called his 9 years in the league that he shared with Jayden Daniels gold. Do you really think they're going to cut Marcus Mariota? Yeah, right. Okay. There's no competition there. The only question is, are they keeping 3? I don't see them doing that. And especially with the way the rules are set up, with you being able to just put Jeff Driscoll on the practice squad. Now, again, you expose him to the rest of the league, but guess what? The rest of the league knows Jeff Driscoll, and if they want him, they can come get him. It's whatever. But Jeff Driscoll is out there for us to sign. And I don't think anybody's like, most teams are comfortable with their backups. The only way somebody comes and snatches Jeff Driscoll from us, and remember, once the season starts, you can protect, I think it's 2 players, every week on your practice squad that can't be touched, right? And Driscoll may be one of those guys. Who knows, right? But most teams have a backup quarterback and they feel good about their backup situation. They're not looking to snatch your backup quarterback. The only time teams come sniffing around your backup is when their backup quarterback gets injured or their starter gets injured. Their backup has to go in and they need a competent NFL backup that's been around the block a couple of times. That's when somebody will come looking for Jeff Driscoll. Nobody's coming checking for Jeff Driscoll right now. So you're pretty safe there. Will QB1 play on Sunday? No. He said no. And I told you guys this on Tuesday that Jayden Daniels wasn't going to play. I told you this on Monday when I first got back, when I broke down the Dolphins game. I said he's not playing this week, but I needed to hear from DQ. And I heard from DQ on I heard his entire press conference on Tuesday for the first time, and his Monday press conference, and he pretty much deferred the question till later in the week. That's not how he's handled that question the entire preseason. When he was asked about whether Jayden would play against the Jets, he told us right then and there on the spot, yeah, he's playing. When he was asked, was Jayden playing in the preseason game against the Dolphins, preseason game 2, he not only told us that he was playing, he told us how much he would play, When he said, we'll see later on in the week, that translation, no, he's not playing. And neither is anyone else of note. Told you guys that, and he just confirmed it today. Not a surprise. More changes at wide receiver, ? This was asked by Nikki Javala, and she said, is there a conversation about picking guys and selecting guys for the roster internally, or are there some conversations about potentially making moves outside of the roster that is here in Washington? And that's a great question. A lot of, scuttlebutt yesterday surrounding the roster and would they go out and trade for an Ayuk. I'm pretty sure a lot of you saw the James Palmer report from NFL Network, where he pretty much said there's no Washington activity with Brandon Ayuk. He's heard nothing to that effect, and he doesn't feel like Washington's a real player for Brandon Ayuk. I contend that Ayuk's going back to San Francisco. I just feel that's going to happen, and we cooled off on him a long time ago. There was smoke early. I think we've since kind of pushed that out of the way, and we just focused in on our roster. But DQ did say that Adam Peters is going to take a look around the league, right? He is going to look around the league and see if there's a reason that he needs to maybe snatch a player off of someone's, practice squad or, waiver wire. A guy gets cut. Like, he's going to be, again, we're number 2. All right. We're number 2. So if we want someone, as long as Carolina doesn't want them, they're ours. So I wouldn't be shocked if, like, a defensive end, because we just don't have the depth at a position like that. Like, that's the only position that I look at right now. Of all the positions on our team, I know a lot of you are like, hey, what about corner? I don't see any corners of note that are going to be able to come in and help us being released. I think they're going to be fine at corner for now. Defensive end is the one position that I look at and just say, we just don't have the depth or the quality right now. And so if a quality edge rusher is released, I could see them maybe picking up a defensive end if you want to be honest. That's the only position right now that I look at and say, hey, we could use one of those. And I'll take almost anything right now, right? So he gave us an update on some injuries, which this was much needed, right? He doesn't have to do this, by the way. So I was like, I appreciate this, DQ. You didn't have to, but you did it anyway, and that's why you're my guy. He told us that both Clelin Ferrell and Dante Fowler Jr. Remember, I started sniffing around. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, something's off here. Wait a minute. That's 2 missed preseason games for Dante Fowler Jr. and 1 missed preseason game and no practice for Clelin Ferrell since. What's going on? Talk to me. And he said Clelin Ferrell was dealing with some knee soreness. Same with Dante Fowler Jr. And again, if this were a game situation, both of these guys could have played on Sunday. However, it's not a real game, and there's no reason to push these guys. So we're going to take our time. Perfect. Perfect. All right. He also talked about Deron Payne, who did not finish practice today. All right. And when pressed about why he didn't finish practice, he said, it's nothing serious. If there was a game tomorrow, he'd be able to play. But, we just wanted to be precautious. Nothing. There's no injury really here to report. My guess is there was like a little tightness that was felt. And the minute that there's any tightness felt, stop. Right? We got 3 weeks until the start of the regular season. Stop. So that's my guess. Nothing's injured, just a little tightness or something like that. And at that point, why? Right? So he also gave us a Marcus Mariota update. So just for clarification, Payne participated in practice, didn't finish. Fowler and Ferrell both got in individual work, as did Marcus Mariota. No team drills for either of or any of those players, of Ferrell, Fowler, and Mariota. But he said all of those players, including Deron Payne, are all trending towards practicing fully next week. I thought there was an omission by the because so much happened yesterday. It can start to play with your mind and you can forget to ask about things, right? Nobody asked about Brandon Coleman. No one asked for an update. No one asked, is he playing in this preseason game? Nobody asked the questions that we needed to hear pertaining to him. So I was a little disappointed in the media because of that, because that was the biggest storyline heading into this week. And then the Jahan thing happens, and then the place kicker thing happens, and everybody forgets about Brandon Coleman. So my guess is, and I told you this at the beginning of the week, he's not playing in this game. And when Dan Quinn said what he said, it made me feel even more conviction that he wasn't going to play, which he said, I want to see him in a preseason game. I don't need to see him in a preseason game for him to start week 1. That's all I needed to know. If he would have said, in order for me to feel comfortable starting him, he needs to play in a preseason game, then that might have changed the way that I viewed this upcoming game. But the fact that he said, I want to see him, we want to see him, but do we need to? No. Okay, he's not playing in this game. So, but nobody asked for an update there. A little disappointed in that. So this was a good question that was posed to Dan Quinn. He was asked, what if you have a good veteran on the roster who's great for the locker room versus a young guy with great potential that isn't there yet, but you see what this guy could be potentially for you moving forward? How do you juggle the decision of a really good veteran, especially in the locker room, versus a young guy that has upside and potential, and you may not want to expose him to the rest of the league? And he's like, that's a great question. And he said, that is right there one of the biggest decisions that we have to make as coaches and, front office personnel, is which one do you value more, and which one allows you the roster flexibility that you need moving forward? And he said, this is where the new rules come in with the practice squad and allowing veteran players. Once upon a time, if you had more than 2 seasons accrued in the NFL, you could not put that guy on the practice squad. So veterans weren't allowed to be on the practice squad. After COVID, that shifted. They allowed veterans on the practice squad. and it's a game changer. And DQ essentially said that, like, look, you know, it makes a huge difference when you can just put a veteran on the practice squad and hold on to you. Because again, this is a thought process. Nobody's coming for Jeff Driscoll. They're not coming for Jeff Driscoll. Nobody's coming for Jamison Crowder. More likely than not, you cut Jamison Crowder, you put him on the practice, he'll be there, right? But if you cut Tyler Owens, or, you know, if you cut a young player like Dominique Hampton and another team said, hey, we had a 5th round grade on this kid, they just got to him before we did in the 5th round, you might not get him back. So, you know, the league knows Jamison Crowder. He's been around the block a couple of times. The league knows Jeff Driscoll. He spun the block a couple of times. Nobody's checking for those dudes. But if you cut Dominique Hampton, if you cut Tyler Owens, who's had a strong camp, and again, I don't know if a lot of teams know what Tyler Owens has been doing in our camp. Right? I don't know. Again, no one drafted him. It's different when teams have a draftable grade on you. I watched Hard Knocks with the Giants. They had Dominique Hampton on their board as a 6th round pick. So they had a draftable grade on him. So again, that's the decision that you have to make. And I think the way that it's set up with the practice squad now allowing veterans, it makes it a little bit easier in terms of the decision-making process. I literally thought about Jamison Crowder when he said what he said, his answer, which was, you know, putting a veteran on there makes it a lot easier. I thought about Jamison Crowder. So DQ was asked how many spots are up for grabs in this final preseason game. And he was like, quite a few. He's like, it's not 10, right? But he's like, there's a good number of back end of the roster spots. And we talked about this. In a normal situation, 3 to 5 roster spots are available. If your team is good and you've already got a ready-made roster, there's not many spots up for grabs. But we're not in that position. That's not where we are in the process. So there's anywhere from 7 to 8 spots probably available in this game that they haven't really truly decided on. Receiver and safety and linebacker and offensive line. And there's a lot of things that they still have to mull over in terms of what they're going to do. I think the framework of the roster is already set. You know, we could, if we sat down together as a group, we could bang out a solid 45 to 47 roster spots right now without any question, right? It'd be those last 5 or 6, maybe 7 that you're like, this could go either way, right? But for the most part, we feel pretty confident. And I think they have a pretty good grasp of what this roster is going to look like at this point. But, you know, there are still some guys that need to solidify their roster spot and put an exclamation point on what has been a really positive summer for them in this 3rd and final preseason game. I just wanted to throw out this acronym because he said it, and you may hear it down the road, and I just want you to know what it stands for. He said ETE, and for him, that means expect the expected. He's talked about that. He's used that phrase a number of times. He talked about the tackling earlier in camp, and in the first preseason game, it wasn't the sharpest, and he said, that expect the expected. I expected that, right? He expects some guys to be a little tight, a little nervous coming into this game. Expect the expected, right? But you still want to see guys push through and play their best brand of ball to give themselves a chance to make the roster. Did want to mention that. Things that are keeping you up at night. DQ was asked about, what are some things that are keeping you up now that you're at the end of training camp, final preseason game, you're going into roster cuts? What are some things that are keeping you up at night? And he said, well, this game in particular for some of the young guys, it's keeping me up at night because I want to see what some of these guys are going to do. And, you know, as a coach, you're never going to say it, but you're rooting for certain guys because there's certain guys that you've taken a strong liking to. There's an affinity. Like, I really like this guy, but if he can't cut it, I can't keep him because I like him. He's got to earn the roster spot. So I'm pretty sure there's a couple of guys that he's like, I want, like Dominique Hampton, for instance. I want to justify keeping him on the roster. We drafted this kid. We don't want to have to cut him and expose him to the rest of the league. Show me something in this game. Make me have to keep you on this roster, right? So he talked about that. And then obviously having to cut guys it sucks. I mean, DQ's a good dude and you're a human, right? And it's not cutting someone and telling them that their NFL dream, especially the guys that you don't want back in any capacity, telling them that their NFL dream at least is deferred here, right? It may not be over, but it's over here in Washington. That sucks, but it's a part of the deal, right? And he knows it. This was probably the most interesting conversation that was had during this entire press conference. And usually you get at least one gem from every press conference from DQ. And this was the gem. So he talked about linebackers on special teams versus safeties. In the old special teams setup, it was of tremendous value to keep extra linebackers and some bigger guys that could be on the special teams return units because they could be on double teams and they could be a part of the wedge once upon a time, but the double teams were really big. There wasn't as much space, right? So you could use that bigger frame to get in the way and shield someone. He's like, now with this new kickoff rule, it's more advantageous to have guys that are quicker with more sudden movement and guys that can make those blocks instead of guys that can't change directions as fast and get to that block. So a safety, a guy in a safety frame might make more sense than a guy that is 250 pounds as a linebacker or 245 pounds as a linebacker. It may make more sense to keep the 220 pound, the 215 pound safety instead for special teams purposes now, which bodes well for a guy like Tyler Owens or Dominique Hampton. He's like, we already have a guy like that in Jeremy Reeves, but I think he said, I think other teams, and I'm like, bro, you're not talking about other teams. You're talking about our team, right? Because I've already started to play the game now, and I've had this conversation with you all where I'm going to start trimming off fat at linebacker. I'm looking at like they're cross-training Dominique Hampton at linebacker. They're doing that for a reason because they're looking at a guy like Anthony Pittman and saying, you don't hold value here, right? You used to, you don't anymore. And the only thing that could save Anthony Pittman is the injury to the rookie linebacker, right? That's the only thing that can save him, is that he won't be ready to go at the start of the season. He'll probably start the season on the PUP list. And that's the only thing that might save Anthony Pittman. And I still don't think that's going to save him, to be honest with you. So I thought that was an interesting conversation where he literally said, yeah, other teams around the league might start thinking about maybe keeping safeties instead of backers. And I'm saying, you're not talking about other teams. You're talking about our team, because we might keep 7 safeties and only 4 linebackers. That might be us. Jordan McGee, thank you, Junior Nemhart. Jordan McGee's injury might save Anthony Pittman. I doubt it. I doubt it at this point. He talked about the plan for Cade York. So Cade York showed up today, got a couple of reps in. He said that he loved the fact that Adam Peters was aggressive in getting him here so that they could get him in the game. I told you that was the important part. They wanted to see him in a game, right? Because that's what's ultimately going to determine if they feel comfortable with him or do we need to go back on the streets again one final time, right? Because that 7th round pick is still dangling in the air. We haven't forked that over to Cleveland. He has to make the roster in order for the Browns to get that pick. They were going to cut him, right? So they don't care about that pick if they don't get it because they were going to cut him anyway. They're hoping that he makes our roster so they can get that 7th round pick because they have a kicker already in Dustin Hopkins. So they were going to cut Cade York anyway. So we just wanted to jump the gun, get him here so he can kick in his 3rd preseason game, which is why we were willing to give up the 7th round pick. Get him here in practice, get him some reps with not only the long snapper, right, Tyler Ott, but more importantly, get him some reps with Tress Way, because that's the holder. That's how you want the ball held a certain way. You let the holder know so he can tilt the ball a certain way, hold it a certain way, which benefits you as a kicker. So you want to get those reps in, and you want to see him kick in the game, obviously. So he said they're gonna, that competition is not over. They said, which it's not, because if he goes out there and he's meh, they could be out on the streets looking again come Tuesday, right? Monday, even if some kickers get released on Monday. If he goes out there and he goes 3 of 3 in the game, makes both of his extra points, he's probably going to be the week 1 kicker, right? They just want to see him do it in a game setting. DQ was asked about Jayden's mental process and, the growth and development he's seen from him. And he said one of the most impressive things I've seen about Jayden is his processing. Like, this kid, it processes like nobody's business. His ability to, go to the line of scrimmage, see what the defense is doing, know where to go with the football. He said it's uncanny. I haven't seen something like that from a young quarterback in quite some time, probably Matt Ryan, right? And then he said him being a communicator has been key, right? And Jayden has done a great job of interacting with teammates, being able to get his message across to his teammates, and in such a way that he didn't come off as brash or cocky or arrogant because he was the number 2 pick overall. He just was one of the guys. And you could hear veterans like Sam Cosmi and Terry McLaurin and Bobby Wagner speak to that. Like, hey, this guy's come in here and he's just been one of the guys. He hasn't come in here with this, hey, I'm the star quarterback, I'm the savior of the franchise type of attitude. He came in here like, hey, I just want to learn. I want to be a sponge. I want to soak up as much information as I can from you veterans. I'm just one of the guys. I'm just trying to do my part, my job, and, be one of 53, right? So it's that communication coupled with his processing, his personality, and then the skills, right? You put it all together, it's a really good package that ultimately could help us end this QB misery and the wilderness that we've been wandering through for over 3 decades, essentially, minus the Kirk Cousins years. I had to say it. Marcus Mariota we already talked about him, so that was the last thing from DQ's presser. We'll have a spirited discussion about the impact of Jahan Dotson's trade from the roster. I'll have a video up tomorrow about the impact of Jahan no longer being here. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow. But let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say before we get out of here. Shout out to the over 350 of you in the comment section right now viewing this video. Do me a huge favor, hit the like button if you haven't already done so. Only 91 likes. We can do so much better than that. So if you haven't hit the like button, please do so if you have the opportunity to. Bradley Roche, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Bradley writes, Louie, what's up, Bradley? He says, happy that we back. Yes, we are back. We all the way live. We all the way live. We back, baby. We made it all the way through this offseason. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. This hasn't been one of those off seasons where I was just racing to try to get to the regular. I was enjoying this shit. I felt like I was on a beach somewhere, lounging, right? Umbrella over me so the sun ain't beating me up, but I got this nice breeze coming off the ocean. I'm laying back and I'm just like this. This is life, right? That's kind of how this off season has been, because it's just been blissful. I told you, this has been one of my favorite off seasons of all times, right? So I wasn't rushing this. Even training camp and listening to DQ and Joe Witt Jr. and Cliff Kingsbury and the players, I've enjoyed all of this. I told you I'm going to enjoy this season. You guys think I'm bullshitting. I'm going to enjoy this ride. While a lot of you are going to be uptight, screaming at the top of your lungs at every play, after every game, win or lose, I'm going to be on some Zen-like Phil Jackson shit, right? I'm just going to be enjoying this ride. This is going to be a fun season. I'm excited. He says, stand up. Join the mob. Y'all heard the man. If you are not a part of the mob, what are you waiting for? Stand up and be in the building. Y'all know what it is. Shout out to the mob. Can't wait for another season. Bart Scott. Can't wait. Always a good time when you rocking with my guy LT. Let's have a blast. This is going to be a fun season, Bradley. I am so excited. We got one more preseason game to get out of the way. And so we'll do that first. We'll take care of that business. You know, we'll be live here at the conclusion of that game. And then after that, bow, bow, bow. Guns are blazing. We're going to hit the season. Guns are blazing. And I'm looking forward to some big seasons from some guys. And we'll talk more about that next week when there's no ball. We'll kind of set the stage for the upcoming season. And then once September hits, September the 2nd, we're all the way back. Commanders Nightly News is back on your schedule. And also, my fall schedule begins on September the 2nd. So we get back to a level of normalcy where you know what to expect from me. It's not going to be as random. We get into our scheduled programming. So the Louie T Network fall schedule begins on September the 2nd. We're back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Don Everhart, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, and thank you for your generosity, Don Everhart. My guy Don writes, Pastor Lou, preach it. Hashtag HTTC. I appreciate you, Don. You know what it is. I'm going to spread the gospel. All right. I'm not always right. Right. But that's why I got y'all here. Y'all got my back. So when I don't have it right, somebody out there does. Right. So I appreciate y'all, man. I appreciate you, Don. Thank you for the support. And speaking of my guy, Don Everhart, look at him spreading the love. I talked about spreading the love. My thumbnail has the end of camp love, all of that embracing and dapping up and guys having a good time. And Don's out here spreading the love amongst mob members. Shout out to Don Everhart for spreading the love and showing generosity and blessing new mob members, 10 new mob members with membership. Stand up. You are all now in the building, courtesy of our guy, Don Everhart. Welcome to the squad, to all 10 new members, and a big shout out once again to Don Everhart for spreading the love. Really, truly do appreciate you, and congratulations to all the new members, courtesy of Don Everhart. All right. Prince G, thank you for being a member of the MOBB for 6 months. My guy, Prince G, writes, love the moves coach has made. Let's go C's. I love, and he started his press conference, did DQ, talking about change. And he said, you know, one of his favorite quotes is, the only thing that's constant in this life is change. And he's like, we've changed quite a bit. DQ or AP and myself have since we've gotten here. And he said, we're not done, right? There's going to be more change. And there's going to be more change throughout this process. And he's not wrong, right? And so at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You know, I remember one of the few things Ronald Rivera said when he was here that made a ton of sense. And you know what? He didn't even say it when he was here. He said it in Carolina. But it was a profound statement. He said a lot of the players got on him in Carolina when he first got there. And because he was changing the way they were doing things and they didn't like it. And he said, who the fuck are you to tell me that you liked the way you did things? You liked being 2-14? You liked being a 2-win team? Because clearly the way you were doing things wasn't working. That's why I'm here. That's why they brought me here. So if you want to keep doing things the 2-14 way, there's the mother effing door. Don't let that shit hit you with a good Lord split you. But I don't want to hear anybody talking about the way shit was done. Clearly it wasn't working, which is why I'm here. Same thing with DQ and AP and company. I don't want to hear anybody talking about the way things were done. Clearly that shit was not working. And the players that were here, most of them weren't producing at a high enough level. So I love the moves that have been made. I just love the fact, because this is what I've been asking for a very long time. I wanted an identity, and they've provided us with one. It's a work in progress. It's not a finished product, but they are carving out what it means to be a commander. And I love that. I love it. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. JLG writes, I'm curious if your opinion on trading for Ayuk has changed since we traded Jahan. No, I don't want Brandon Ayuk. And I don't have anything against Brandon Ayuk. I really, truly, and I was having a conversation with my buddy yesterday, and I said, I truly believe Brandon Ayuk is a good receiver, but he's a very big, he's a huge part of that offense in San Francisco, but Kyle Shanahan's offense has benefited him in ways you can't imagine. I'm not saying that if you take him out of San Francisco, he can't still thrive. But I do think that offense has made things a lot easier for him to thrive, if that makes sense. I think that a guy like T. Higgins makes a little bit more sense. That's part of the reason they brought in Martavis Bryant, right? A big body, a guy with a huge frame, a catch radius down in the red zone. Like Ayuk is 6 feet tall. Like he doesn't change it. We have enough 6 feet receivers. We don't need any more of those. I'm not saying that if you can find a stud 6 foot receiver, like if you can find a Garrett Wilson who's like 5'10", bring him on, right? But if I had to choose between a 5'11", 6 foot receiver or a 6'3", 6'4" receiver, I'm gonna go with the 6'4" guy if I know he can play already, and we know T. Higgins can play. If you're asking me about a receiver that is on a team right now that we might have a chance to get in the future, it's T. Higgins. It's not Brandon Ayuk. No, my stance on Ayuk has not changed. I'm not willing to give up draft capital and then have to turn around and pay him when I know next season T. Higgins will be a free agent because the Bengals are not going to franchise tag him again. And so he's going to be a free agent, and all you have to do, and this is the thing, and I think I mentioned this to you guys already. I'm not sure if I did or I didn't, but I'm pretty sure I did. But if I didn't, this is going to be a destination that players want to come to now. Dan Quinn has changed the entire, him and Adam Peters have changed the entire way that this organization is viewed. But I'll take it a step further. Now players are going to want to come here because of Jayden Daniels, right? Before, because remember, when you're talking about specific players, the first thing they look at is who's your quarterback. That's going to be a huge part of me determining if I even want to go there. Who's your quarterback? Because I need to know I got a chance to win. Nobody was coming here to play with Sam Howell. As much as I love Sam Howell, nobody was coming here to play with Sam Howell. You know, nobody was coming here to play with, Carson Wentz. No one was coming here to play with Taylor Heineke. All right. We could sit here and, be excited about a 3 or 4 game win streak all we want, but nobody's coming here to play with those guys. So guys are going to want to play with Jayden Daniels, right? So I can see a T. Higgins saying, yeah, hell yeah, I'll go play with Jayden Daniels. Damn right. And the money's good. Yeah, I'll go do that. So my stance hasn't changed on Ayuk. I'm good on him. Devontae Holton, thank you for being a member, or stand up. Devontae, you're the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. Show Devontae some love. Welcome him with open arms. Devontae Holton, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you on board. You're just in time. Toot toot. You're just in time. That train's starting to get moving. You're just in time. GT7, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, GT7, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Josh Doctson, Jahan Dotson, same or different? Much different. But what's funny is my buddy said the same thing. He called Jahan Josh Dotson. And I said, first of all, I need you to get his name right. And he was like, it's the same shit. And I said, no, it's not. But really, it is. Former first round pick that didn't pan out here. The only difference is we didn't trade Josh Doctson, right? We just didn't re-sign him when his contract was up. Versus, Jahan, we moved him, and relatively early, I may add. So it was different because I always thought that Jahan was more talented than Josh Doctson. I just felt like Like, I never felt like Josh Dotson was going to explode at any time. Never. Never once did I say, yo, look out for Josh Dotson this year, yo. I think he could be a problem. I always felt like Jahan was on the cusp of doing something big because I felt like he was talented. And I always told y'all, and I said this yesterday, and I've been saying this, for me with him, it was never the talent. It was always the opportunities, right? So GT7, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. GT7 writes, is T. Higgins possible? No, the Bengals aren't. Because, again, the Bengals, I talked about this last night on the preseason game with the Bengals. I know a lot of you didn't watch that video, but I talked about the window of opportunity for Cincinnati, shutting just a tad bit after this season, right? There's a lot of uncertainty hovering over Cincinnati. Trey Hendrickson's contract situation, T. Higgins contract situation. There's, you have to pay Jamar Chase, which they're going to do next offseason. But there's a lot of uncertainty, hovering around that team. And so this is your best opportunity to win the Super Bowl, right? I mean, really last year was, but Joe Burrow got hurt. But, this year it's this is going to be their best opportunity with the core group that they started with, because Higgins won't be there after this year. So they're not going to trade him because he gives them just the same thing I said about Brandon Ayuk. Like, you're going to have to pay Brock Purdy after this offseason. So if you want to maximize your window of opportunity, if you're the 49ers, the reason why I didn't see Brandon Ayuk going anywhere, trading him made no sense to me, is because even if you couldn't get a long-term deal reached with him, your best chance to win a Super Bowl comes with Brandon Ayuk being on your roster. Same could be said for the Cincinnati Bengals. Your best opportunity comes with T. Higgins as your number 2 wide receiver. So, no, you can't get a deal done with him this year, but you can get one done with him next offseason. And that's more ideal because you don't have to give up any draft capital to get that done. You just got to pay him, right? So that's the ideal situation to be in. Big Money Sonny, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, my guy. Big Money Sonny writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, Big Money Sonny? Did the rest of the NHL merch get sent to the needy kids in Africa? Hashtag Wild Goose 37. You know I'm rocking that jersey all season long. Salutes. I'm holding on to that NHL gear. Did you see Sam in the preseason? Hey, it ain't dead yet. New. How order. It ain't dead yet. Okay. I might have to change the white to some kind of neon green. And maybe the black to Seahawk blue. But it ain't dead yet. Don't count my guy out yet, man. Sam was out there throwing some dots in the preseason. Gino, I'm not surprised. Gino. Oh, Gino. I'm not surprised he's playing in preseason game number 3. After the way Sam looked, hey, I got to make sure my spot is still safe. So, no, I'm holding on to the merch for now. Hey, you got to let that Wild Goose jersey go, man. You got to let it go. That was not a good investment. You still trying to milk every single cent out of that investment. It was a bad investment. Just let it go, man. Sometimes you got to know when to cut your losses. All right. Anyway, I digress. I see somebody in the comment section said they can tag him again next year. Yeah, they can, but it's going to cost them a lot of money if nobody. If T. Higgins signs that, which he doesn't want to, but if he signs that, it's going to cost him a lot of money. A lot. That wide receiver money keeps going up and up and up and up every single year, right? And so if I'm T. Higgins, you wait to sign it because Jamar Chase is going to get a big deal, right? There are going to be other receivers that are in line to get massive deals next offseason. And you let that number go up and up and up some more because it's the average of the top 5. And then you have to tack on an extra, I think it's 25% or something like that, because he's been franchise tagged a second time. So they could theoretically tag him again. They're not going to, though. It's a lot of money for one guy at a position where they're already going to invest in Jamar Chase. They're not tagging him again. Anyway, I digress. That was the last super chat. I appreciate you guys kicking it with me on this Friday afternoon as we head into this weekend of the final preseason week of the offseason. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys on Sunday night after the game. I believe that game is 8:15. I saw Matt Ryan at practice this week. Obviously, Chris Collinsworth and Mike Tirico were at practice today because they're doing the game. Remember, I said that I didn't think Collinsworth would be doing the game. I thought they'd give him, but even he's in preseason mode. You got to get ready for the regular season, and that's coming up here shortly. So I didn't know if we were going to get him. I thought they might give us some Tony Dungy and Mike Tirico or something, somebody filling in for Collinsworth. But no, Chris Collinsworth is there. I saw Mike Tirico at practice today as well with him. So that tells me that they're going to sit down with Jayden Daniels. They're going to sit down with Dan Quinn and, maybe Bobby Wagner. And hopefully we get a couple gems from them, sitting down, talking to those guys. Because literally they're going to be talking about, everything but the game. Because unless the Patriots are playing Drake May and Jacoby Brissett, which they may, there's a chance. I wouldn't rule that out. There's not going to be much to talk about in that game. And especially when it comes to us. We're not going to be playing many of our starters. So anyway, I digress. Mike Leslie, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Mike Leslie writes, I'm late to the party. What happened to Law Nation on Super Friends? Yeah, you real late. Like so late, I almost don't even want to answer your question. But you super chatted, so I will. We talked about that a long time ago. Where the hell you been at? Damn. He was busy. He was too busy for us. That's what it boiled down to. Like, I don't want to get into specifics. I was literally about to tell you something that I have no business telling you. But he was just too busy. At the end of the day, we all got our own shit going on. And either you can or you can't. And he couldn't. And that's what it boiled down to. So that was that situation. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Door Gunner writes, stretching to prevent a double hammy pull week 1. Hey, let's just hope. Let's just pray. Let's put our hands together and let's just pray that Cade York is the answer to all of our kicking woes and issues. Let's just hope that he comes in here and settles the position down and we don't have to have these conversations about you staying ready. Okay. All right. So let's just hope that this guy comes in and takes care of business. That's all we can hope at this point. Okay. We don't need you going out there. So anyway, I digress. I thank everybody for joining me here on this installment of Training Camp Confidential, the final installment of Training Camp Confidential, as training camp is officially over. We made it to the finish line. Third and final preseason game takes place on Sunday night versus the New England Patriots. And then after that, we turn our attention squarely to the roster being set at 53 and then what they ultimately do with the practice squad. And then after that, we turn our attention to week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So with that said, I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Sunday. You guys stay safe, stay active. Keep your ears to the street just in case some craziness happens. Obviously, if it does, if anything shakes with this team, you know what it is. You're going to see this face invading your space, but I don't anticipate anything crazy happening other than a preseason game taking place on Sunday night. So you guys enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you guys on Sunday night for Commanders and Patriots. Big Money Sonny, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Nah, Lou. We know you the king of the super friends. Shout out to Bad Dog, though. Smoke Newports can continue getting. Chill, bro. Chill. Okay? Chill, man. All right. Yikes. All right. Leave my guy LB alone, right? Anyway, I digress. Y'all enjoy the weekend. I'll see you guys next time. And I look forward to chopping it up with you after preseason game number 3. And maybe we'll have some clarity as to the roster come the end of that game. We'll see. Anyway, y'all take it easy. God bless. Good night.